Mennegar is with the Washington State Secretary of State's office. He's the productivity board manager there and um, really sharing all about their efforts there that they have, introducing the productivity board. Super excited to have him today and talking about just how state employees can participate and there's a little incentive involved. So I won't give too much away, but Greg, take it away. Happy to have you here.
All right, thank you, Teresa. I really appreciate the opportunity today. I'm super excited about being here with all of you today. This presentation might be a little different than some of the normal lean projects that you see. And before I get started, I just want to let you know a couple of things. So I know that most of the attendees are state employees. The program that I'm going to talk about today is only for state employees. It's an employee suggestion program. And I just, for those of you that are with other local agencies or in private industry, you might want to sit in and learn about what we're doing. And it could be a model for something that you implement within your organization. But at the same time, I also want to let you know that if you're not a state employee, you would not be eligible to participate in this program. So I want to be respectful of your time and make sure that you know that up front. So with that, I'm going to jump in here. Just a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction to what the Productivity Board is. I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between innovation and recognition and where we fit in that in that picture. Give you an overview of the actual suggestion process, talk about a couple of different ways that folks can apply for Productivity Board cash awards and how that gets paid, get into what the responsibility of all state agencies is a little bit. And people love success stories, so I've got a few of those to share with you. So thanks again. It was great to also, I just, watching the names scroll by, see a few familiar faces or names, some of our coordinators and partners. So glad to see you all here today. So the Productivity Board was initially started to encourage employees to be engaged with their workplace and to look for opportunities to find better ways of doing things, and especially things that would save money. And to that end, it provided a an avenue for you as an employer or for your agency as an employer to provide cash awards to employees that came up with cost saving ideas. And the other thing about the Productivity Board is that it provides, we're kind of like Switzerland. We're a neutral third party that helps to implement a process to make sure that these ideas get a fair evaluation. And some of you have probably been here for some time with the state and may be aware that the Productivity Board existed before. So we're saying we're starting it up, but it actually started in 1982 during a bad recession, and it was discontinued in 2011 during another recession. But during its existence, what we measure in terms of results are the savings that are generated in the first year after an idea is implemented. And based on that measure, there were almost $60 million saved during the course of the program. But many of those savings went on and on and on. So really, realistically, excuse me, there were hundreds of millions of dollars in savings, and over $1 million were awarded to state employees in the form of cash awards. And it was a very cost-effective program with almost $10 in savings generated for every dollar that was spent to operate the Productivity Board program. Just real quickly, I wanted to give you a little overview of the Secretary of State's office, which we're part of. So Secretary Hobbs is an elected official. We're I think probably most well known for elections. That's where we get all the press. But in addition to that, the Secretary of State's office operates the programs that registered corporations and charities to do business in Washington, the Washington State Library, the Talking Book and Braille Library, and many of you may be familiar with the state archives, which not only preserves history of the state, but also provides record management services to both state and local government agencies and operates the state record center. And then there's the combined fund drive, which is another statewide program, much like the productivity board, that enables employees to make charitable donations through paycheck contributions. And last but not least is the address confidentiality program that helps protect crime victims from being found by their attackers. So I mentioned before that there's, what you do in your day-to-day work as a Lean or Six Sigma or continuous improvement practitioner is you innovate. The name of the productivity board is a little bit misleading because we don't actually do anything to improve productivity, but what we do is provide an avenue for your agency to recognize you or your team when you create savings or do projects that generate additional revenue within your agency. And so it's a great way for employers to and managers to recognize people that are making great contributions within your agency. And it's just an additional incentive for you as a practitioner to find ways to save money. So, and many of the projects that you're doing do save money. Your agency can approve, excuse me, a submission for a cash award for you or your team, depending on the conditions of that. And get into that a little bit. So there are two different ways that suggestions can be submitted through the productivity board program. The first is called the teamwork incentive program, and I think this aligns really nicely with your continuous improvement efforts. So it's really for a team that not only comes up with an idea that's going to save the state money, but actually does the implementation of that project. And it provides up to $10,000 in cash awards for each team member. One of the really nice things about this program is that you can either apply prior to implementation of a project, or if you've already implemented a project and it resulted in savings, you can submit for an award up to 1 year after implementation of the idea. All submissions do require agency approval, so don't send them to us first. Talk to your agency about it and make sure that they're behind this. But if they are, then you can submit your application, and we can talk a little bit more about that process. The other way that folks can get cash awards and be recognized for their efforts is through the employee suggestion program. This is for employees, and it could be more than one person, but often it's just an individual that submits an idea to their agency, and they don't have to implement the idea, but if the agency adopts it and implements the idea, that person can get up to $10,000 as a cash award out as a percentage of the savings. This one's a little different. The application has to be submitted prior to implementation of the idea. Ideas can be for other agencies or multiple agencies. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but if it's not a cost saving or revenue generating idea, the agency also, as a result of the legislation that created the productivity board, has the ability to provide employees with awards of up to $200 in value for ideas that maybe improve safety or customer service or reduce time spent doing a process. So there's also that avenue available. This is super high level, probably a little way too high level for many of you that are very detail oriented, but at a very high level, for an employee suggestion program idea, those applications come directly to us first at the productivity board through our website. and we will review the application to make sure that it meets all the eligibility requirements, which are on our website. So you can go there and see those. If it does, then we will forward it to the agency. We have a coordinator that is our liaison with all of the different agencies. And I know some of you are here on the call. And then the coordinator will help find a subject matter expert or experts within your agency to evaluate the suggestion to make sure that it's practical, that it will have the results that the person recommended. And then we have a 9-member board that provides an oversight function. They will review the recommendations from the agency to either adopt or not adopt the idea and make a final approval on those recommendations. For teams, it's a little bit simpler because the agency has already reviewed and approved your project and given you their blessing. So there really aren't any um, uh, eligibility requirements. It would go straight to the board for review and approval. There's some reporting if you're doing what we call the before application, where you're submitting for an award before implementation. There's some reporting that you'll have to do, and there is some information that you'll have to supply along with your application. If you do it after the fact, then you should already have measurements about what the impacts of your implementation were. And also, and if you would like to ask questions, feel free to drop those in chat. I'm keeping an eye on that. So for the employee suggestion program, we just started accepting applications in January of this year. So we're starting to see some trends, and we want people to be successful in their applications. And so just want to let people know that all those eligibility requirements are on our website. So make sure that you review those before you submit an application. Make sure that you complete all the information that we ask for. And wherever there is research required to submit an application, and it's super helpful if when you provide your research that you cite sources. So if you've talked to somebody within your agency, let us know who that is so that the evaluator can follow up with them. If you've done research on the internet or in other areas, if you can cite those sources again, so that can be validated, that's going to help your application. Um, so, and the other thing that's really important is that you do some sort of cost benefit analysis. We have a form on our website that you can fill in, and it will automatically do calculations for you. So that's there as a tool. You also might consider reaching out to your fiscal office. And for teamwork incentive program applications in particular, we really recommend that you involve somebody from your fiscal office in that project, if that makes sense. So to talk about a little bit about how what the awards are and who pays for them, those are questions that always come up, especially when I'm talking with leadership. So the awards are paid by the agency or agencies that benefit from the suggestion. So if you make a suggestion for another agency, and it's adopted, that agency would pay you instead of your agency, and the same goes the other direction. The question comes up about budget. There are a couple of questions that come up here typically. One is about budget. So you've already budgeted funding to do something, and the awards are paid as a percentage of whatever the savings are. So it's money you've already budgeted. The other question that comes up sometimes is there are a number of agencies that get a lot of funding from the federal government, and the suggestion program isn't for the federal government. So anything having to do with suggestions that would impact those type of programs would not be eligible for the productivity board. As an agency, you have some flexibility over how and when you disperse those awards. As an employee, it's important to know that the awards are taxable income. And the other stipulation about the award is that it does not count towards your retirement calculations. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to stop for a second. There are a few questions in here. How was the board created? So and I'm not sure if you're asking about the productivity board program or our 9-member oversight board, but the board was created through uh, I don't remember the RCW number off the top of my head, but it was created many years ago through an RCW and then reinstated through legislative process. The board members are the Secretary of State, a representative from DES, a representative from OFM, and then a number of other board members who are uh, have certain stipulations around them. One is appointed by the Lieutenant Governor's office. There's somebody from higher education. There's somebody who is a union represented employee. So our board is very diverse. The way that is part of how the board is kept neutral. There's a lot of diversity, and they're there just to uh, act on facts. As far as where the funds come from, the board itself, the productivity board staff, which I am part of, is funded through the state's personnel office. As far as the funds for awards, again, those come from the agency that is benefiting from the savings generated by a suggestion. So if you've budgeted $10 million for something and it's somebody makes a suggestion that saves $100,000, they are going to get a percentage of those savings. And a question from Jennifer Phillips. This is great. So sounds like agencies need to work this into their communications to their staff. Your agency is going to be presenting next, and they've done a fantastic job with that. So Jessica is going to talk a little bit more about that, how we're doing that. And that gets to the responsibilities of the agency. So every agency is responsible for promoting the productivity board program, for assigning a coordinator. Jessica from DSHS is our coordinator, so she can talk a little bit more about that. And we have coordinators with every agency within the state that has more than 150 employees. There are a few really small boards and commissions where we weren't able to identify somebody, or they just didn't feel that they could participate due to the size or the funding of their agency. But and the agency, when you receive suggestions, is responsible for evaluating those. And the other thing is that when you bring on new employees, part of their new employee orientation should include receiving information about the productivity board. And we've provided information to all of our agency coordinators to forward on to HR folks to assist with that. And again, the RCW that established the program is 4160, and then the WACs that govern the program, 38306, is for the employee suggestion program. 38307 is for the teamwork incentive program. Okay, so a couple more questions came up. One is, do you have any examples of past results, innovations? And I will get to that here momentarily. I have a few that I'll share with you. Steve, there was a question: an employee's boss might not appreciate inefficiencies in their office being reported to others. Does the system allow for anonymity? That's a great question. It does, to a point. So somebody can submit a suggestion anonymously, and we will not include their contact information. However, if they qualify for a cash award and elect to receive it, they can decline it. But if they elect to receive it, then they're no longer anonymous. Their information has to be provided in order for them to receive payment. And then a question: how is it handled if an agency is not receptive to this program? There's really nothing that we can do about that. We would, and it is in the RCW and the WAC, and it says that agencies shall participate, but there is no productivity board enforcement program in place. So we will be doing some reporting about agency participation. So there will be some level of accountability and visibility if agencies are not uh, participating in the program, but we're not here to enforce anything. So I'm going to jump back into the presentation, and I see some more questions coming in. I'll get to those momentarily. So there are a number of benefits to your agency. Just one more way to recognize those employees within your organization that are contributing, that are making outstanding contributions, being able to actually reward them and go above and beyond just their salary, cost savings or additional revenue for your agency. Obviously, uh, as a lean practitioner, this is hopefully one more incentive for you to really dig in and look at what your agency's doing and find ways to make things, improve processes, but also look for cost savings where possible. And then there have been a lot of, and I have some examples of these as well, a lot of great improvements that maybe don't save money or generate revenue, but resulted in better customer service, improve safety and morale. I mean, people like to work in a place where things happen efficiently. Many of us have worked in one place or another where there was inefficiency, and for a lot of us, it can drive us crazy, right? So, just finding ways to do things better is great. So let's see, before I scroll too far away, there was another question. Does the payment happen after the money has been saved from the improvement or before the potential savings take place? What happens if it doesn't end up saving the costs anticipated? So that's a good question. And again, there's some flexibility in that. So if it's something, let's say that you're purchasing X number of items every year, and somebody suggests that you purchase a different type of item. Let's just use light bulbs, for example. You've had incandescent lighting, and they suggest that you switch to LED lights, and you know approximately how many you're going to buy every year and what that cost difference is. In that case, you might pay that person up front, but you don't have to. You have up to a year after implementation of the idea to do the payout. If it doesn't end up having the exact costs or savings that were anticipated, what you can do, or if it looks like that, there's some question as to what that might end up actually being at the end of that measurement period, you could pay out part of the award that you are comfortable is going to be realized. And then at the end of that 1 year measurement time, true things up for the individual. So people love, asked about examples of some of the different ideas. These are just a few of the hundreds of ideas that came through the productivity board over the years and were implemented. But a lot of this is common sense stuff. So the state patrol had a towing contract with a vendor for the entire state. And one of the troopers suggested that they contract at their regional offices throughout the state so that the trucks didn't have to go so far, and it saved them over $64,000 a year, just for that simple change. I mentioned changing light bulbs, so um, this was before LED lights, I think, but this saved $25,000 a year and over $250,000 over the course of 10 years, just changing the type of light bulbs at the correction center in Purdy. Uh, some people have done, this is an example of a teamwork incentive program project where a team at the DOT uh, basically developed their own internal software uh, to for a management and reporting system. They've been paying a vendor for software licenses, maintenance, etc. And that change resulted in over $400,000 in annual savings. And again, it's a program that they continue to use, so millions of dollars over the years. And then this is one that I always like. It's so simple, but had such a huge impact. The DOT also had a fleet of large trucks, and at least at this time, they were all manual transmissions, and they put a light in the truck that would indicate to the driver that if you shift now, this is the best time to achieve the best fuel economy, and that in itself saved almost $2 million in the very first year. And that was probably when gas was maybe $2 a gallon and not $5 a gallon. Some other familiar ideas, and somebody asked about this. Uh, so a couple of things that the Department of Licensing did, the first and last um, suggestion or items were both from the Department of Licensing. One was to just change, they were putting a sticker on the back of licenses for organ donors, and those stickers could come off in your wallet or get lost, and then nobody would know that they were an organ donor. So they changed it so that it's actually embedded in the license. And another sorry, it's the third item, was to create ID cards for children that have their fingerprints on them in case they are either lost or I think what spurred this was that there had been a string of child abductions at the time. Things like the Department of Transportation putting signs for us on the freeway to remind us to stop at the next rest area if you're feeling tired. And then labor and industries are, fraud happens, and they created a website for the public to identify and report that to help reduce, that money that was being paid out illegally to folks. So another question: are the reward payments split between the team who made the suggestion, or does everyone get the full reward percentage? So I did not get into the details of that. Let me explain how the percentages work. So for the employee suggestion program, that's the one where you just submit an idea to your agency, and if they adopt it, you get an award, and based on the cost savings. The awards are 10% of whatever the cost savings are, with a maximum award of $10,000. Okay. For the teamwork incentive program, it's a little different. The percentage is 20 up to 25%. So the agency has some discretion in terms of how much of the savings they pay out. So it's up to 25%. The maximum that each team member can receive is $10,000 per team member. And to the specifics of this question, does everyone get the full reward percentage? That is also at the discretion of the agency. So think about it. If, for example, if you had a team of 4 and 3 of the people were heavily involved in the project, and one person just didn't contribute as much as the rest of the team, then it might be equitable to all involved to have that person receive a smaller percentage of the award than the other 3 people who were spending a lot more time or all their time working on that project. So I hope that makes sense. And that is the end of my slide deck. So so here's another question. Explain how these cash awards are not considered a gift of public funds. It's authorized. So the award structure and the award program are all authorized in the RCW. So it's statute that these are awards for um, outstanding contributions to the operation of state government, and they are actually reducing the expenditure of public funds, and just a percentage of that reduction is being shared with the employee, the government, and the citizens receive the rest of it. So I'm not sure if that exactly, I'm not sure how to answer that from a legal standpoint, but hopefully that helps with that question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. This was absolutely informative and motivating. I don't know if anyone else feels motivated to, make some improvements, but after speaking with Greg about the productivity board and hearing what it's all about, Tolly and I definitely got motivated. So I hope you all did too. Any more questions, feel free to raise your hand, drop it in the Q&A in the chat. Looks like Tasha had one more question for you, Greg. Have you heard of the program being used with grant funds or without statute?
So that is a good question. Being used with grant funds, that actually reminds me of something that I meant to mention. So um, for those of you, so one of the things that we see sometimes when suggestions are made is that the agency will come back and say, this is a great idea, but we're not going to be able to realize the savings right away, and so it would end up costing more than it would save. um, this is IT specific, but you may or may not be aware of this. If any of you are in IT and doing projects there, WATEC has an innovation and modernization program where they are giving out grants of, I think last year was $3 million for IT projects. And the application window just recently closed, but that's something to keep your eye on moving forward. Um, other than that, I'm not aware of it being used with grant funds. So I think that could be a sticky area, because those grants are probably earmarked specifically for a certain use, and being able to pay an award out of that might not be possible. Your agency may have some flexibility within their budget to find some money somewhere else to pay those awards, but that's really sort of an agency issue. Um, and I'm not aware of things being used without statute.
Thank you. And I missed Beth's question earlier. Hey, Beth, are the reward funds taxable income, Greg?
Yes, they are. So if you get a $10,000 award, it's going to be taxed, and just like anything else. I saw a couple of other questions too. How do we know who to contact at our agency? So we actually have a listing of all of our agency coordinators on our website. So you can go to our website, and that was on the last slide that I presented, which is available to everybody. So that's there. What if it's time savings? Does that need to be equated to a dollar amount? So they have to be tangible cost eliminations, and with time savings, really the only way to do that is by eliminating staffing, which we don't want to be the grim reaper, and I don't think people submitting suggestions want to do that either. But that is something that could qualify for the $200 recognition award that I mentioned. So that's let's see if there's anything else. I think if I make a suggestion, I like this one. If I make a suggestion that significantly increases the number of useful suggestions to the productivity board, do I get a cut of those suggestions? The answer is a hard no, but I'd be willing to take you out for lunch or buy you a beer. So thank you for your offer to help with that. And I think that's all of them.
Awesome. Well, if anybody has any additional questions for Greg, I'm sure his virtual door is always open. We can drop his email in the chat there if you would love to reach out to him and connect with him and learn more and just kind of understand the process a little bit better. But yeah, definitely exciting. I know you stated it's only for state employees, but hopefully, if you are private sector or out of state, hopefully this gives you a little bit of some idea on some things that you can implement in your organizations. But we definitely appreciate you, Greg, for being here and for providing this information for folks. Great incentive. Thank you so much. All right. Well, with that, uh, we'll hear a real live example from Jessica Hernandez at the Department of Social and Health Services. She's the Organizational Development Administrator, and they actually, I believe, went through the Productivity Board process and submitted an idea that resulted in some savings. So would love to pass the mic on over to Jessica and hear all about that. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you everyone for allowing us to join Greg in today's meeting. I'm going to go ahead and get my board going. All right, it looks like we are all set and ready to go. So we wanted to just start out our presentation today by thanking Greg and the team at the Secretary of State for being amazing partners in terms of the Productivity Board work. If you are new to the Productivity Board and this process, they are some of the most supportive partners you could ever ask for, available via phone and email and Teams, as well as creating helpful resources for us. So, as we think about what has led to some of our success, we're going to take a look at DSHS participation throughout the history, because as Greg mentioned, Productivity Board was around for a while and kind of went away. So we have some historical data that we would love to share about our participation over the years. So we have data all the way from 1983 to 2005. Uh, on the screen, what you're seeing here is a comparison of the number of suggestions received and the number of ideas that were actually adopted. So you can see we've had some ebb and flows in participation over the years as the Productivity Board went through. And we're going to go ahead and just capture a quick look at what some of those savings looked like. The savings ranged, as you can see, by a great deal. Our greatest savings took place in 1998, which was actually over $3 million. I know, right? So you might be thinking, what does this look like in comparison? So, when we think about our history, the least amount of ideas we received in a year took place in 1983, our very first year that we could account for. It was also the same in terms of least adopted, and that was 4 ideas, and we did not calculate any fiscal year savings, right? So, this means that there was value savings, but there wasn't any tangible fiscal savings. When we look at our most active times, right, our most received in one year was 881 suggestions in 91. We adopted 156 of those suggestions. And then our highest fiscal year actually wasn't in 1991. It was a result of our large project that came through in 1998. Over the total years of involvement with the Productivity Board, DSHS has had a total fiscal savings of over $9.8 million. Now, this is all historical. We are excited to share, though, that we did just finish our first assessment and evaluation process for the new Productivity Board. So, we want to kind of share with you some of the examples of ideas that were adopted that's come through our history, just to give a little insight into what are the types of things that we see come through DSHS. One of the very first ones, and this goes way back, and this is regarding pregnant and parenting women. So, this was actually a cross agency recommendation in which we created a consistent way for individuals that needed support with substance abuse and parenting, women in general, to be able to access dedicated resources, services, and support through essentially a no wrong door policy, one point of contact. This actually saved both of our agencies over $7,000 a year, not to mention the impact of improving customer service, right? Another example we have actually comes from our lean side of things, and this was the e-forms conversion and warehouse consolidation. So this is where one project actually led to another project. So the first project was how to convert to e-forms, and this was a result of the governor's directive at a time. And while working that project, the project team actually found a way to consolidate our warehouse. And so both of these actually led to the net savings of $290,877, and the total team award was $65,000. So that just shows a great example of the rewards and benefits that can be available to your team members as we come through, right? This is another one of our initiatives, the court-ordered restitution reporting process. This was a process that actually created some automation in terms of us identifying and recovering court-ordered restitution for individuals with families. And so this actually was able to save $30,000 per year, essentially, which was at the time equivalent to one FTE or position. Another system that was implemented was actually a little bit of a longer project. It occurred over October 2003 to September 2004. And this was our automation of medical claims data, right? So, this is an IT system essentially that allowed us to pull reporting and data together to be able to reduce the amount of time that was spent within each of the programs impacted. So our actual net savings for this project and recommendation was 23,246, and the award that was approved by our agency was $5,811. This is one that actually was included in a news read from, at the time, Secretary of State Sam Reed's office. This was from November 2006. And this is really about going above and beyond in how we saved over $2.7 million of potential savings for our taxpayers. This was really about the adoption support program and how we could kind of restore that restitution as it came through. So we're very excited about that one in particular. Another system enhancement automation that impacted how we serve our customers across the state was our financial institution data match and data sharing contract revision. So, the revision of this one contract led to an anticipated savings of $109,664. And that's just from reviewing and revising one particular vendor contract. So, we've shared tons of examples, and now we'd like to share a little bit about what those keys to success have been for our agency. We are excited because, as I mentioned, Greg and the Secretary of State office is a fantastic partner in this work. One of the things that we really do is we cultivate a culture of feedback and ongoing enhancement. So within DSHS, we have a Leaders Empowered to Elevate program. It's a new program for us, but it's where we provide leadership development support through to employees through 5 stages of the career. all the way from being an emerging leader, meaning I'm not quite yet a supervisor or program manager, up to our executive cabinet. The focus and emphasis of this program is how to be a person centered leader. It's not enough these days just to be a human centered design approach as an agency. We need to take that a step forward and start to understand what's important to and for the individuals that are doing our work, as well as understand how best to support them by sharing power within the process. And so, all the way from the time I begin as a new employee, we are reinforcing this culture of feedback. We are encouraging feedback to take place both directionally from supervisor to employee and employee to supervisor. And we reinforce regular one on one check ins to create these opportunities. We also strongly communicate within our agency that failure is not a mistake. It's not anything to be ashamed of, but really it's our first attempt in learning. So looking at these as learning opportunities because we can repair and fix anything essentially that happens. So when we create that culture and reinforce that culture through our leadership development, it creates a sense of psychological safety and it normalizes the process of giving feedback, which will then reinforce our desire for continuous improvement and the receipt of ideas. Now, this also directly connects to our next initiative, which we feel is a strong key to our success, and that's the boosting of employee motivation with relationships, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This is essential component of person-centered practices, and this is where that power shift takes place. Instead of being empower over, being empower with. When we co-create, we create additional autonomy, empowerment, and buy in, and we can achieve greater results together. The third piece that we have that has really led to a key in success is establishing connections with our already recognized initiatives and brands. Some folks mentioned in chat that this relates to some of the other work they're doing. And that's exactly where we come in as well, right? We have what we call our Employer of Choice Strategic Initiatives Program. Now, the history of our employer of choice program is once upon a time ago, it was a project, and it's where we collected live ideas from our employees on how to improve recruiting, hiring, and workforce retention. We were very, very excited to transition that project into a long term program because it's something that we utilize to support our organizational culture and our leadership culture. Now, as part of that, when the productivity board launched, we saw this as an opportunity to leverage that relationship. So we actually adjusted our focus of our employer of choice to connect with the initiatives of our three focus areas for our employee engagement survey action planning, and then built the connection about the recognition and the ability to continuously improve and streamline through our relationship with the productivity board. So I'm actually going to stop my screen share and switch screens for a second to show you an example of what that looks like. All right. And right now you should be seeing my screen, which is our internal SharePoint for employer of choice. This SharePoint is accessible to all DSHS employees at all times. Through this site, we have our history of employer of choice. We have links to our members. Another unique part of this is that, yes, we have program management staff, but most of the work is done through dedicated focus work groups, which has representation from all 7 administrations and the offices within the Office of the Secretary within our agency. The other unique piece about this program is our communications campaign. And so this is where we really stress the relationship with Productivity Board in terms of issuing quarterly newsletters. We also issue quarterly podcasts. These podcasts are typically related to the initiatives that we roll out or the tools or supports that are built and created as a result of these ideas. So we feature those, we communicate those out. And we also have a dedicated space for our advisory board to highlight resources. Because anytime we're looking at continuous improvement in an agency the size of ours, I mean, we're supporting over 18,000 employees. Some of this is really about how do we communicate to others what is available and out there that can support them in their work, right? So we've created also this advisory resource spotlight. And so advisory members from each of the administrations pick different tools related to the idea submissions we receive from employees, and they will share their personal experiences and advice around those tools. So this is another opportunity for this to take place. You'll see here that we have a direct link to our Washington Secretary of State Productivity Board. And so this is where we introduce the board. We link directly to their website for additional ideas, and we have a place for them to go ahead and actually submit their ideas. And it links directly to the online forms that are on the Secretary of State's site. This allows them an alternative way in case they aren't able to locate the website readily, because we always strongly believe in being able to contact that through more than one way. Now, the other unique part of this relationship is we are 100% transparent with our staff ideas. So, an example of what this looks like is right here. So you can sort, any employee within our agency can sort to see what ideas have been received. They'll see what the status is. You have the ability in this to remain anonymous or to identify yourself as a point of contact. What we do is we provide the idea submission, what the status is. We identify the points of contact that are leading the work towards implementing, and then we provide regular updates as to what that status is. Now, we have new and in review, we have in queue, we have in progress, we have implemented and needs met. We do also have a category of ideas that are not able to move forward, but if an idea is not able to move forward, we explain why. For example, if there's an idea around adjusting benefits, we explain that we do not have the authority as benefits are bargained, and we recommend that that individual connect with their union representative to learn more about that process. So, this is just some of the ways that we have worked on really kind of trying to build up awareness and communication. Another example that we have available, let me grab this, is this infographic right here. This is something that we created to kind of introduce our staff to what the productivity board is and how we work with it. It gives the background, it gives the primary authority that they would be interested in, and then an overall view of actually what that looks like. We also have established resources for our internal support of this project. As Greg mentioned, there's part of the process that Productivity Board holds, and then there's part of the process that the agency holds. So this is actually a support toolkit that we provided to our sub-cabinet members, in which we introduced what the Productivity Board is and what our relationship looks like. We then provided the process as the productivity board has outlined it, and then what our process as an agency looks like so they can build on. So when we receive a recommendation from the productivity board, we take it to sub-cabinet first. They identify which programs are potentially impacted At that point, we then ask them to identify the program matter experts that would support us in conducting that evaluation. Now, if this is identified to be something that would impact DSHS as an enterprise, then we actually, through our Employer of Choice Strategic Initiatives program, will provide the project management oversight to actually do that evaluation. In addition to the cost savings benefit analysis, one of our requirements for our evaluation process as well is that we not only include the administration representatives, but that we include a member of our EDAI office because we are looking for an equity impact analysis to be done in addition to the cost benefit savings analysis. And we're also looking for an assessment of potential intersection with our pair service lines. So, those are some of the kind of tips and tricks and communication practices that we've really used to try to help support our positive relationship with the productivity board. So that way it's a win-win for both of our departments. And that is what I had to share for you today.
Very awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing that. Just all the wonderful examples of the ideas that have been submitted and have gone through the productivity board. And I personally just love, just the promotion of the culture there and, really making sure that information and idea sharing is very transparent and having people be able to share their firsthand experience with tools and things like that. That is just really awesome. It sounds like you guys are doing quite a bit there. So would love to open the floor for folks that have questions for Jessica. Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to use the chat. We'd love to hear that. I think one question that I just had, I love just the idea of course, getting employee suggestions on ideas. It sounds like you guys kind of have your own process there. So are employees responsible then for submitting any of those ideas that did get implemented to the productivity board when they're able to kind of like I guess datalize, I think I made up a word, the cost savings.
I love it. We're really into the no wrong door policy. So as we receive those ideas, we support, right? So if we're identifying that an idea that's coming through that might be eligible for this program, we're connecting back with that person and encouraging them to apply, providing the link, that sort of thing, right? The other piece is this most recent idea that came through actually went to the productivity board first and then came to us, right? And that's just fine as well. We're happy to work through that. And so now that we've worked through that idea as a program, we'll add that to our employer of choice idea tracker. So that way they still have that information as well in case somebody thinks about it in the future.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, thank you. And I'm sorry, I had one other question. I'm just so like blown away by just all the great work that you guys are doing there. So I know you have been, submitting ideas since the 80s. I'm just curious, one question that came through from Greg's presentation was, how do you kind of get leadership buy-in, for submitting these ideas? Did you ever have any hurdles or barriers that DSHS had to work through and anything that you learned from kind of getting that buy-in to share with others?
Yeah, so we have not experienced any hurdles. Our leadership team and executive cabinet is all about how we can improve and getting those ideas from employees. One area to mitigate, right, especially with the types of social and health services we provide, is the potential impact to budget. And so that's something for us to take into consideration because as we identify cost savings and stuff like that, often in case, as other agencies might recognize, those cost savings are kind of promoted towards representing programs and creating more services and those sorts of things. So it's not a barrier. Our leadership team fully instigates and supports this process. What we do to mitigate kind of that is we've elected to streamline our communications on a quarterly basis, right? So quarterly, we will send out that kind of newsletter, and what we have is our Inside DSHS weekly email. Um, and it will kind of highlight all of the action that's taken place over the next quarter rather than more regularly advertising or communicating about. So that's just one of the ways that we mitigate that.
Yeah, just lessening just the communication, information overload. That's a great strategy. Awesome. Any other questions for Jessica? Feel free to ask away. Another minute. I think I've just been asking all the questions because I'm so intrigued. All right. Well, if you do think of any questions, I'm sure Jessica's virtual door is also always open. And I'm also, Jessica, it might be a great idea if folks are kind of interested in creating some sort of process within their agency, maybe just kind of bouncing some ideas from off of you, because it seems like you guys have a very well-oiled process here that makes sure not only to get employees' ideas for improvements in general, but also to, submit them to the productivity board and make sure, those ideas are getting seen and heard. So yeah, absolutely, Ellie. We'll drop Jessica's contact information in the chat as well. Thank you so much, Jessica, for all the great information and just sharing your journey with the productivity board. Appreciate Greg as well for his presentation.